I'm Fi.
And I'm Justin.
And together we are Pajamas. This is the first installment of the We Just Watched It review. I need to think of a name for this. We literally just finished watching a movie discussion. It needs a better name, but I guess I'll think of something, and eventually I'll title it that, and that'll be the name of the
We recently saw a film and thought that it would be a good idea to have this recorded as we would discuss what we thought about it.
Yeah, we literally just finished watching a movie and we haven't said a word to each other about it. We're going to discuss it.
The situation, though, was that it happened, we did this so quickly afterwards that we don't have a title for it at the moment.
No. So this is just a pilot episode, I guess you could say, of us discussing a movie together right after watching it without discussing it together at all, because it just finished like minutes ago and we came directly in here. So we just watched the American remake of Death Note. I want to precursor it that we have seen the anime.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I've seen the anime twice.
Well, I have also seen it twice.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I saw it once before I met you, and then I watched it with you.
Right. So yeah, we both seen it twice, so that's we're pretty knowledgeable about the anime. And we haven't seen any of the Japanese movies yet, but we're probably going to change that very soon, possibly tomorrow. So we'll be comparing pretty much the anime to the American version we just saw. So, what did you think of Death Note Americana?
I would say overall that it was all right.
Yeah, I'd give it like a 5 out of 10. It was very average.
It said on Netflix 4 out of 5 stars, but I didn't think that it was I didn't think that it was that good. I would say maybe a 3 out of 5 stars would be the most that I would give it.
At best, yeah.
Yes.
At best. I give it like 2.5. Like, it wasn't horrible.
Yes, they didn't destroy Death Note.
Right. Well, parts of it were destroyed. But they're also fitting like a 30-something episode anime into an hour and 40 minutes.
Well, yes, there had to be some cuts from the story in order to fit it into less than 2 hours.
And also, they had to really like progress other parts of the story very, very quickly in order to get to the finale. Well, finale.
Yes, it's also one thing that I would say about it is that it's based off of Death Note, but isn't exactly the plot of Death Note. It isn't true to the story, word for word, line for line, scene for scene.
Well, it couldn't be because it's so long.
Well, yes. Not only that it's so long, and thus it would have to be condensed, but also that there were some changes made. Mm-hmm. Some drastic changes, actually. Oh, though, yes, it's an American remake, and the story would take place in the United States instead of Japan. So I suppose that in that sense, yes, it would make sense, I suppose, for being a remake. Although I'm not very sure of why a remake needs to change its location and its plot.
I didn't understand why Light needed to be a Caucasian American male. Like, why couldn't he still been someone of like Japanese or Chinese or Korean, like Asian descent? Still could have worked. Still could have spoken American.
Yes, and it would have also have been more true to the story, but what I think was going on when this was made was that instead of having it be a copy of it, that it made it its own individualized thing.
It's the American interpretation of Death Note.
Sort of like how Beauty and the Beast and Beauty and the Beast animated and live action, they were very different in some aspects, so that one wouldn't simply be a carbon copy of the original. And I suspect that this remake was meant to not be a carbon copy of the original live action, that they're simply doing the same thing over again.
Let's put this into like ways that is easy to digest. Let's talk about the pros, the good things from the movie. What did you think were good?
Well, one thing that was the least true to the story was the philosophical debate of what exactly is good, such as what is Light's idea of justice and what is L's idea of justice. In the original, they do have these opposing views, and which does lead to them conflicting with each other at times. And it's also manifested in, which actually is the philosophical basis of Death Note itself. What is justice, really? And one thing that is this film also maintains from the original is that very basic notion of these two opposing views of what is justice. Well, is Kira doing something that is just, or is he doing nothing more than what the other criminals were doing, but in a different manifestation?
All right. I will keep it simpler than that, but that was a good point. I thought a pro was the fellow who played L for the first hour of the movie did a phenomenal job. I thought he did a really good, it was for an interpretation and a reimagining of L, he did a really good job. The last 40 minutes of the movie were not L. That was not L at all. L would not have acted like that. But
Yes.
the first hour of the movie, I was very, very impressed with him. I'm actually going to look him up on the machine here and see who this was. I also know the main actor who played Light. So L was played by Lakeith Stanfield. Do I know him from anything? Oh, he was in Get Out. We still need to watch that. So I thought he did a good job for the first hour. I mean, you're taking a very, almost like emotionless, complex character like L and adapting him to like an American persona with sort of the same backstory still.
Yes.
But the mannerisms were good. Him sitting on the chair was good. He always barefoot a lot, like L was. He's notorious for that. Eating all the candy.
Yes. However, I did notice that he did act rashly around the end, which was something that was out of character for L.
Yeah, well, the thing with L was he's good at predicting all the moves ahead of time. So he should have seen what Light was going to do and then been ready to react to get the checkmate he was looking for. Not to devolve into that justice you were talking about, where he's at the end with the piece of Death Note and will he become Kira or not? I didn't like that because I wrote in my movie journal that L would never stoop to Light's level. Never. No matter what Light did, he would never stoop to that level. He was always very even and emotionless and just almost dry with how he just did things and his delivery. And so the last 40 minutes really bothered me because once Watari passed, he like went off a cliff, and that doesn't make any sense. Like he should have had fail safes in place to make sure that didn't happen. Because he did they had more time to tell it in the anime. But up until the end, even L kind of knew what he was getting into in the anime. Like he was still shocked, but he didn't. It's hard to like. It's almost like Light didn't really outsmart L in the anime, really, because L knew kind of the whole time that it was him.
Yeah.
But I didn't like that. Like you said, L was very rash and irrational. The moment he grabbed the gun, L just wasn't. He was done being L.
Yeah.
He became whatever the writer directors turned L into, which was a big mistake. Up until then, Lakeith did a great job with the character, I thought. So the fault doesn't lie with him. He did a good performance. The fault lies with the writing and the directing, because they wrote him like that and they directed him to do that. And that's not L at all.
Indeed, I would agree. One thing that I didn't like about it was that actually both Light and L, they weren't exact, because it was condensed, it wasn't able to go into more detail about how cunning they would be or strategic. In the anime, they're very cunning and very strategic. And in this live action version, I can give L credit for some cunning and he's very insightful. He's able to make connections like in the anime. But, well, that's what L can do, and that's what he still does. But Light seems to not have as much tact as in the anime.
Well, Light would get mad about stuff in the anime, but then when he was around L, he was like perfectly composed. He was playing the chess game.
Yes.
Here he wasn't. Like here they're arguing in like a restaurant, and that was like the really only time we got like the back and forth, and it felt disjointed. Like it didn't feel like. I don't think the guy that played Light did a very good job. His acting wasn't bad, but I think that the way they presented the character was wrong.
Yes, I noticed that when Ryuk made his appearance, and he acted immediately in a way that Light wouldn't have acted.
I mean, I forgave that, because you'll see like a big death god. I mean, that's going to be scary. Voiced by Willem Dafoe. That was a big, big positive. So happy about that.
I did like how Ryuk looked in live action. He looked like how he would have looked if he were made into a live action being. That it wasn't something like a globby CGI fake looking thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I thought Ryuk was really well done. That was a positive. That was a big pro for me. Let's see, another pro. The Death Note looked cool. Like it actually looked neat. It looked as it should look, worn and tattered and.
Yes, like a very ancient book.
Trying to think of other positives. Because I guess we're hitting negatives too. We'll talk about the positives, but that's, good and bad. What else did I like?
What did you think of... Well, Misa became Mia. What do you think of Mia? I already know what you think of Misa.
Oh, Misa's... Oh my god. Misa's... Oh my god. The second most annoying anime character I've ever seen, ever. But Mia, the American version...
I do give it some credit for being a little more cunning than in the anime.
Well, yeah, because Misa in the anime is just like a ditzy, bobblehead, annoying thing. And I mean, Mia's annoying too, just in the various... I hate when they write female characters to just say stupid things. Like, when they're on the Ferris wheel, and she's like, I can't believe you put my name in the book. Well... She fucking put his name in the book to get the book. That makes her worse than him. But she's all like pissed off and offended about it. Stop writing characters like that, especially women. It makes the female character look stupid, and you don't want to do that. And if they're trying to present Mia as cunning, she should be like, "Oh, you got me. Like, I tried to trap you, and you reversed it on me, and."
That she would be much more, she would have more foresight, and she would be more scheming.
Yeah. And not so, like, just like when she was mad about him not wanting to kill his father. Well, your mother died, so he should kill his father now? Well, there was no logic there, and they did that. They made her say illogical things and do illogical things, and that was just okay. When it didn't fit the character they were trying to build her as, in my opinion.
I did notice that she was much more manipulative of Light, instead of simply being in love with him as she was in the anime.
Oh yeah, in the anime it was clearly one-sided, and he was using her.
Yes.
Completely. Because she was just stupid. But in this, it was...
And she had the eyes, which he used to his advantage,
right.
Which actually wasn't in the live action, but I suppose that would have taken too long.
Oh yeah, they threw...
That would have made the plot more complex.
They threw so much in there already. Yeah, I didn't like her character at all. I thought she was really annoying. I mean, the actress did a good job. Let's see who played her. Mia was played by Margaret Qualley. I'm not familiar with her. I couldn't get into her character. Once they became a couple, you strayed from the source. You Americanized the source material so much, because not every male and female main interest need to be lovers. They don't need to be fucking. They don't need to be boyfriend and girlfriend. Even if she was manipulating him to get the book, which she was.
Yes. it's something that I do give this live action one credit for, that she's much more cunning than in the original.
Yeah, I just think that they could have went about it differently. Like, I'm not saying that they had to carbon copy Misa, because Misa, good God, was really annoying. Like, was she using him? Wasn't she using him? Did she love him? Didn't she love him? I don't like the trope that the female has to be the conniving one, and then the male has to be the dopey, I got played one. I mean, in the end, it didn't work like that because he wrote all the stuff out in the book. Only because she forced him. She showed her hand, and then he had to retaliate. And then she got mad when he retaliated, which makes no sense. Stop doing that. I once they became a couple, it just kind of... I was scribbling furiously in my notes about how it kind of just...
It then becomes something like a cliche. That,
again... An American cliche, yeah. Because American movies do that. Light in Death Note was... And same with L. They were so intelligent.
Yes.
And I wrote this in my notes, that they were very much... And I mean this in the nicest way. They were very much like asexual characters. Love and feelings and sexuality weren't an issue. They were about the game, playing the game. Mm-hmm. Light being Kira, L wanting to capture Kira, knowing who Kira was from early on and playing the game of chess. Instead, we had Light gets the book, gets his power complex like he did in the anime, falls for Mia. That whole tangle of them working together to kill people was...
I think that I know what's going on, maybe. This would involve the anime's connection with religion. Did you notice, for example, in the opening themes of the anime, that Light is in the famous painting of the creation of man, that he is like Adam, and that by taking the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, that he would become like God in the story. And, well, with that, that's how that would be manifested in the story itself, live action and anime, right, and even the manga, as this God complex. That's him becoming like God, and that this book would be the fruit.
Which he had in the American version. What in the anime was well told. But they had I consider the main anime up until L died. When L died in the anime, that's when the story ended for me. The whole part with Nia was ridiculous, tacking on just crap.
You aren't the only one. Many people feel exactly the same way.
The anime started and ended when Light and L, and then Light and L ended. When Light won, that's when the anime ended. They couldn't let him win, so they had to continue it on. But... I forgot what I was going to say now. You're talking about, the creation. Yes. They had him get the God complex a little bit in the beginning, but then it went to almost me and Mia manipulating him, and I didn't like that, because I was like...
Back to the story, I think that what was done was that they worked a little more with the Eve part of the story, in which that Eve is the one who tempts Adam. She is trying to get him to use more of his power, get more involved in it.
Right.
And she is trying to get him to do it. I suppose that Ryuk would be the serpent.
Yeah.
That is the one that's presenting them with the book. Well, the fruit in that one story, or in this situation, the book. And by having him finally get in more... When she tries to get him more into it, she is leading him to his fall, and which then leads to the fall of man. And with L's fall being in this live action, that would be very likely the Well, with this one, I suppose it would be at the time of the Ferris wheel, because then he gets to on par with her by doing the same thing that she did to him about writing the name.
Yeah.
And so that would then be the time when he metaphorically will eat the fruit, and then he falls. What I find very interesting about that story is, have you ever noticed that nothing really happens to them until both Adam and Eve eat the fruit? Do you ever notice that? That when Eve took it, but then when Adam takes it, now something happens to both of them. Should something have happened to her and then something happened to him? With this analogy, I think that that's what this live action was trying to go for, that going a little more into Eve's part of the story.
Now that you say that, yeah, now that you lay it out like that, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
That
I didn't think about it like that.
Mia pulls Light down with her tempting, and she brings about, actually, in this she even brings about her own death. Like in the story, but in a different way.
Yeah, well...
That by doing what she did,
she brought about her death by trying to kill Light to get the book. Therefore, he had to retaliate, and his retaliation was much more intelligent.
And they, like I said, in both situations, it was done by the female trying to get the male down to her level.
Taking that sounds vaguely sexist.
I didn't make the story,
but
that was written centuries ago in a very patriarchal world.
Let's go back to the actual movie for a second. I think if you're going to write her as this deceptive character, tack on 20 more minutes onto the movie and flush her character out a little more. It's like, oh, I tried to get you. Oh, it didn't work. Oh, I'm dead. The literal fall of man and woman.
Well, yes, they really fell out of the Ferris wheel.
And...
which I suspect is also a connotation to their fall, because it isn't, again, what I find interesting about the story is that it isn't until they both eat the fruit, then they fall.
But differently in this, though, is that man took...
Yeah, they literally fall.
But man took the fruit first. The male took the fruit first, the female found out about the fruit, wanted the fruit for herself. So it's there, but it's a little different, but your analogy to the creation and all that, it works.
That there's analogy, but it also stands as its own independent story.
Yeah. I'm going to stray from the current topic. I want to talk about something that I like to talk about. The music. The score was good. The use of actual music, songs, was poor. I'll just put that out there. I didn't like the actual use of real songs. Take My Breath Away was a good choice for the dance. The song that was playing, I believe it was at the Ferris wheel part. I can't remember the name of it. There was a couple songs from the movie that just did not fit. But the dance, the Take My Breath Away fit, and some of the score was really good.
You mean I'm Your Lady and You Are My Man?
Yeah,
that song?
That was so, like... It didn't need to be that much exposition. Like, that was too much, like... Ugh.
Because
the power of love didn't need to be... Because you can't have the power...
Well, yes.
Because
maybe the song is supposed to be a reference to love being the opposition to hatred? Maybe? Which is what fuels people to do... Well, think about it. If you're going to do something very bad to someone, I highly doubt that you love that person.
The song should have just been called The Power of Ambition. Because that's what it was about. Light's ambition versus Mia's ambition.
Yes.
And that's what pissed me off the most about the movie, if I want to be perfectly honest.
Out of everything, that was the most.
Death Note, the anime, was all about the chess game, like we talked about, between Light and L. This movie was all about the almost power struggle in the end between Light and Mia. Mm-hmm. Like, it started off good. It started off with promise.
Yes.
Other than the actor that played Light, didn't like him. Very miscast, in my opinion.
Did you also see the reference when he opened the locker to American Horror Story?
Yeah, that was clever. I liked that.
I liked that.
Light Turner was Nat Wolf. God, he's just been in a bunch of stuff that I would never watch in my entire... Like, a bunch of, like, love stuff.
And yes, I think that that's supposed to be a romance, The Fault in Our Stars.
Oh, yeah, you are correct. I didn't think it was very... I mean, he acted okay, but he wasn't the right choice for L. I don't know. He wasn't the right choice for Light.
Well, he wouldn't have been a good choice for L either.
Oh, God, no. Like, they chose well for L. Until the end. Up until the final act fell apart. Which really was really disappointing. I was really enjoying Lakeith's performance. Because it's a very complex character. So to, pull it off for the first hour was good. After that, it went down onto a train wreck.
They also did a dichotomy. Well, one of the obvious differences between these two is what they look like.
Well, yeah.
That they did an extreme dichotomy of someone being extremely light to someone being very dark.
Yeah. I mean, they even made...
To show, I suspect that it was to show that these are, well, to make a difference. Well, once again, that this is based on Death Note. This isn't simply Death Note on stage.
Well, also, because in the anime, one of them was blue, one of them was red. That was how they just... Like, that's how they, pulled them apart, color-wise.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I can't think of much more to say.
It was something that you hated the most about the film, and it had to do with...
Well, no, I said that. The fact that they took the story from being Light and L battling and changed it in like the 45-minute hour mark to Light and Mia battling for the Death Note. The entire thing should have been L going after Light and not doing it in like a ramshackle, caution to the wind, because that's not L. L is calculating, and he's cunning, and he's planning. His mind works like a chessboard. He's going to plan the moves out. He would have had a failsafe for Atari that he didn't have, and I didn't like that. And then it sent him because it sent L into a spiral because something happened that he couldn't predict or control. I just don't think that would have happened. That's not the character of L. Every move he makes is purposeful. He would not get himself into a situation that would allow him to be compromised.
Yes, that is something that is very critical to his character in the original.
And they just threw that out the window once Watari died. Once he died, L was not L anymore. And I didn't like that. And then because once L stopped being L, then you couldn't rely on that chess game anymore, and you had to rely on the new cunning in Mia, who was not written strong enough as a character to fit the role of L as the cunning character against Light. And Light was so poorly acted anyway as this cunning figure who was just, in 99% of the time, driven by emotion and wanted to please Mia.
Which also was out of Light's character.
Exactly. So they wrote Light wrong from the very beginning, in my opinion. L was good for an hour, and then they just threw it out the window. Just because, I don't know what they were thinking. And then they tried to replace L with Mia, and you can't do that. Because that's just, you can't, like, I get what they were going for, but it just didn't work for me. Like, I think I still say if they had an extra 20 minutes to flush it out just a little more. Like, if they're going to make her the new L, the new central...
Or maybe the new...
power struggle?
With the new Kira, she would be the new Light that...
Yeah.
L would then be looking for.
But so it's like they take Mia, trying to turn her into L to turn her into Light. And that's so convoluted. When the entire time, if she's... Like, this could have worked. It could have. But her character needed to be written better. Light needed to be not as dumb American schlub.
One thing that I was wondering about, what you noticed about L was that in the anime he's much more in control of the situation, whereas with this one, the film ended with him being... not at the very end when he has a pen in his hand, not at the very, very end, but close to the end, he's escorted out of the building, the police escorting him out, and that showed him to be a bit too... He wasn't as dominating of a character as in the anime, that in that scene, because, he would have very likely have been someone who would have foreseen that happening and would have had a plan for it, instead of then giving giving power back to the police, not directly and not verbally, but by the situation. They had him leave instead of him telling them what to do from this point.
L, the character of L, would not have lost like that. Now, technically, he didn't lose in the end, really, but at that point you're talking about, where he got escorted out, he lost the initial battle. He would not have lost the battle like that. Like you said, he was like I said, and I agree, he's always in control.
And he most certainly wouldn't have done something that would have the police then lose trust in his judgment.
Yeah. Like, he wouldn't have stolen a cop car. He wouldn't have taken a fucking gun. Ever. Like,
he even said at the in the live action that he doesn't even
that was
have
foreshadowing. That was really bad foreshadowing. I was hoping it wasn't. I wrote it down in my notes. That I was like, I hope this isn't foreshadowing, because that would just be the anti-L, and that's what they made him into the last half hour, 40 minutes of the movie.
It may be a subtle difference, but I noticed a difference in this L of his behavior when I noticed that when he took something sweet from the bowl, that he took something quickly and put it in his mouth.
Yeah, he took all like the M&Ms or whatever they were really fast.
But I remember L as being someone that would have taken them individually and would have had them. Remember, L is someone who takes individual sugar cubes and puts them into his drink.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I that didn't bother me as much. That was just a autistic license. They could just make L more like focused on this. Which doesn't fit the character, but that was something
I think that they were trying to humanize him so that the audience could feel more for the character, or
maybe trying to like identify with him easier.
Yes.
It's an American film, so we need to dumb it down to a degree.
And well, as you noticed, by doing that, though, I wasn't able to identify with the characters as I was able to in the anime Death Note. Should I say this? Or you can edit it out. Well, because of my condition, by humanizing him per se,
right,
I was then not able to relate to L as I am able to more easily in the anime. With the anime L, I'm able to relate to him very easily. But in this live action one, when they humanized him and had him more rash, less computer-like, I was then not able to relate to him more. So actually, paradoxically, or ironically, by making him more relatable, he was made more unrelatable to me.
And
because of I have wondered if maybe, as you know, I have Asperger's syndrome. That's my situation. I don't consider it a fault. I don't consider it a bad thing. It's simply something that's different about me.
Right.
I have wondered if maybe L also possesses Asperger's syndrome, which makes him more capable of thinking more deductively, and he thinks much more critically because that's what his focus is.
Right, you were talking about how it removed you from being able to identify with the character because of that. I think it also did the same thing in displacing him from the actual character of L.
Yes, he was...
Which is what you were saying too, but
by having him more human-like, he wasn't as much like a computer like I am. He also didn't have his social quirks, and at the same time not caring about them, which is also part of the syndrome. By doing that, making him more human, I was less able to relate to him.
In my opinion, my estimation, it became a complete bastardization of what L was originally supposed to be.
Is what happened with this live action consistent with your using more American remakes of already existing Japanese films? And you have seen the Japanese originals. Would you say that this is actually typical of an American remake?
This is... I mean, I can think of a handful of remakes that were... I mean, it's better than the remake of Old Boy, that's for sure. It's not just... They have to just make everything so relatable and shiny in American cinema.
Too Western?
Yeah. And what's cool about Asian horror, be it Japanese horror, Chinese horror, Korean horror, and even like Spanish horror or French horror, there's a realism. Each genre of foreign horror has its own little niche that it does really well, and
its own special touch,
and
something that makes it unique to that particular culture.
Yeah, and Asian horror, like, it's really good at. It's not out to make the audience happy. It's out to tell a story. if it needs to be gritty and brutal and heartbreaking and original and unique, like Ringu was amazing to watch. When I first watched it, it was like, wow. And The Ring wasn't bad. It was it was one of the better American remakes. But if you think about Death Note, it's not trying to please the audience. It's not trying to make L relatable. It's not trying to make Light, Light doesn't have a sex drive. He doesn't, he's not trying to bang Misa. It's the other way around. It's not about Misa being a cliche, cunning female using the man to get what she wants. It's not about L turning into this emotional thing, because he's not emotional. But then that's what makes this character so interesting to me, is because that's very rarely portrayed in popular culture. And not just that, it's very rarely portrayed accurately and well. And L was written so just perfectly.
Yes, that's possibly something about him that I was able to find very appealing, and I was able to relate to him more.
I mean, think of...
Well, that, and also he's intelligent, and yeah. I'm also intelligent.
Well, think of like 5 characters off the top of your head from anything that resembled Asperger's syndrome, not in a negative way, not as a debilitation, just as it's who they are, it's how they operate, it's how they tick, and that's what makes them them. That was L.
And use it to their advantage.
Yeah, they didn't treat it like a disability, and I liked that. Here, they treated L like he was just quirky, and then turned erratic. Like, yes. Oh, L's just this quirky guy, so he just get used to his oddity. I think he was a little too self-aware of how odd he was. Where in the anime, L knew he was odd, but like you said, he didn't care. Mm-hmm. He was so focused on the intellect, and so focused on the cat and mouse game, on the chess game.
Yes.
That he didn't care. And he didn't care that he held things like this, he took a sugar cube one at a time, or that he ate nothing but sweets. Like, those were his OCD minor tics, his little indulgences. But that was just part of who he was. But he was focused on being like the walking computer. And then he had Light, who was trying to match him step for step, who was very much similar, but also had emotional and physical attachments, family and school, and things that L really didn't have. So they were equals to a degree, and Light ended up winning. Light was just the dichotomy between the two characters was too strong, I thought, in the American remake. It was just I'm trying to be intellectual, I'm going to be emotional and vulnerable, and Light was never vulnerable. Even when he was in jail in the anime, he knew what he was doing. So when he appeared vulnerable, he was still playing the game. And here he was always vulnerable. He was vulnerable to Ryuk. He was vulnerable to Mia. He was vulnerable to L. He was vulnerable to his dad. He was vulnerable to...
That is something that I noticed at the very beginning of the live action. He was giving the impression that he was vulnerable.
He was vulnerable 99% of the movie.
Yes.
He never really had the upper hand. He just seemed like a child with a new toy that didn't know how to play with it. And Ryuk just kept laughing at him because he was just not smart. And L was smart, sort of, but he was just quirky smart. He wasn't calculated smart. So, I don't know. Overall thoughts?
Overall, that it is all right. It may not be great. It also isn't rubbish. It's all right.
It's very average. Very, very average. But this felt, unfortunately, very American. And I don't mean that in a really derogatory term. I just think with American adaptations, they take too much liberty. They, like I said, try too hard to please the audience. It's too shiny. It's too bright. It's like Justin said, the Death Note is about morality. It's about a god complex. And we had a little bit of morality there. We had a little bit of the god complex there, but then it was just too much emotion, too much trying to put other characters in other characters' spots to lead to something else, to do something else. It got way convoluted, I thought. It's nothing I think we ever need to see again.
I would definitely own Death Note, the anime itself.
Oh,
Definitely.
Yeah.
But as for this, unless if one is a very avid collector of Death Note and feels the need, the craving to have every single little thing of or related to Death Note, I wouldn't actually suggest even owning this. It's more of something to see once and then have the pleasure of having seen it once.
I think maybe if people hadn't seen the anime, like let's say you're like a 13-year-old who's never watched the anime, and you watch this, you might like it. It might seem really unique and awesome to you, but if you've seen the anime, no. All right, I think we've rambled on long enough. We're going on an hour on a mediocre movie. Just imagine how much we would talk if we saw something really good. So thank you for watching the inaugural episode of Insert Title here. I'm Fi.
And I'm Justin.
And we will see you next time. Cheers.
Goodbye.